Remember when Apple launched the iPhone 15 Pro Max and all hell broke loose with social media posts and articles of people saying that it was overheating, that fingerprints would change the color of the titanium, that it was laggy, that the battery life was terrible, and of course the classic durability test that made people lose their minds over the switch to titanium? Well, I've been using the iPhone 15 Pro Max for almost 9 months straight, and I have to say that the people were not wrong. There have been issues. Most have been fixed with software updates, but some have actually made me regret buying the 15 Pro Max over something like the 15 Plus or the regular iPhone 15. So before we talk about those issues and also my number one regret with the 15 Pro Max, I want to talk about the hardware because my stance has changed on the hardware. So Apple's big marketing push for the 15 and 15 Pro Max was titanium. They were basically saying how it was better than stainless steel, but in reality, it's only a thin overlay of titanium in the frame. It's not a full solid titanium frame like you would expect given Apple's big marketing push, by saying it's made of titanium. But I've loved the titanium. I mean, it's super lightweight. It's much more lightweight than previous Pro Max iPhones, and it just looks and feels better in the hand because it's made of titanium with the rounded edges. Now, if you remember, one of the big viral things that went, crazy when this phone first came out was that the fingerprints on the side look terrible. Everybody says that it changes the color of the titanium frame. It's just a fingerprint magnet. It's terrible compared to stainless steel. And I have to say that I completely disagree with that. It seems like everybody has kind of stopped talking about that since it's not getting engagement on social media anymore. So number one, I've actually been using this phone without a case for a while. So, maybe for the past few months, I've been using it without a case. And, you do see the fingerprints on the side. They're very faint, but it's not nearly as bad as the stainless steel, at least not on the natural titanium color. Now, I will say I do also have the blue titanium, and the fingerprints do show up more on that, but it does not change the color of the titanium frame. Now, here's something that surprised me. The durability of the iPhone 15 Pro Max has actually been much greater than what, social media would make you believe. So we saw that durability test from JRig Everything, and obviously we can see that the 15 Pro Max broke, and it looked like, in some areas, it was more scratch prone than stainless steel. It scratched easier than stainless steel in some areas. But for me, I do not have a single scratch on my 15 Pro Max, which is crazy because in previous years I have had, minor scratches, but I don't have anything here on this 15 Pro Max, and I've not been using a case for the past few months, and I've also gone previously without using a case as well. Now, I do have a screen protector, so anytime I set it down, I do set it down on the screen side, so I do, all those scratches do go to the screen protector. And if you've watched my videos for a while, you might be wondering, why did you go caseless with the 15 Pro Max when you've never done that with any iPhone in the past? And the reason for that is because, honestly, I just felt safer doing it with this phone because the repair costs were so much lower. So for the iPhone 15 Pro Max, if you wanted to get the back glass repaired, it's $199 compared to $549 for the 14 Pro Max and previous Pro Max iPhones. So the repair costs were significantly cheaper for the 15 Pro and Pro Max this year. So that also made me feel a little bit safer, especially since I don't have Apple Care on my iPhone. It made me feel a little bit safer that if I did drop it, if I did break it, it would be a lot less to repair it this year compared to previous years. And like I mentioned earlier, the rounded edges on the 15 Pro Max feel amazing in the hands. They feel better than stainless steel to me. It's less sticky. I've noticed over time it doesn't stick as much, and I don't notice the fingerprints as much. But that's also the thing that you lose when you put a case on. You don't really feel the new design, on the 15 Pro Max. It just feels like every other iPhone. So that's another reason I did not use a case. Now, something else that's changed since the iPhone 15 lineup has been announced is Qi 2 wireless charging. So this is the latest wireless charging standard, which is developed in part by Apple and leads to improved efficiency and faster charging at 15 watts. So the iPhone 15 series had Qi 2 already built in, but at the time of launch, there were no Qi 2 chargers on the market. They were not actually developed yet. But now they are on the market, and I've actually had a chance to try out a few of them with Qi 2 built in, and two of my favorites come from today's sponsor, ESR. So they recently launched a 3-in-1 wireless charging station for your home or office that can charge your iPhone at 15 watts while also charging your Apple Watch and AirPods simultaneously. But my favorite is the travel version, which is a 3-in-1 charger that weighs just 131 grams times and can also charge your iPhone at the full 15 watts while also charging up your Apple Watch and AirPods. This guy just got back from a trip and it was the perfect bedside companion in the hotel room. I just love the way it folds up into this tiny little block. It just makes it so convenient for throwing it into practically any pocket in your bag. It even comes with a travel bag, but I never needed that because it's so slim and lightweight to begin with. I could just throw it in anywhere. So if you want to get in early on the Qi 2 train, check out ESR because you can get the same 15 watt charging speed as Apple's MagSafe chargers, along with the same great alignment for the magnets, just for less money. You can pick up one of these chargers by clicking the links down in the description below. Okay, so we have to talk about the battery degradation because if you look on social media, you will see a lot of posts about people complaining about their battery health percentage on their 15 Pro and Pro Max specifically. Now, I have also been affected by poor battery degradation. Now, it's not as bad as the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max, which is the worst I've ever seen. I made a video on that last year, but it's still pretty bad, I have to say. So if you take a look, my maximum capacity at the time of recording is 92%. That's bad after 284 cycles. So I've lost 8% of my battery's capacity over the past 8+ months. So that's about a percentage of battery that I'm losing every single month. To me, that's bad. And obviously it's partly my fault with the way that I use my phone. So that's also another reason that I'm glad with the iPhone 15 series that we can charge our battery only up to 80%. So we have the 80% limit here in your settings, battery, and charging optimization. I've actually just recently started using that to try to preserve what I have left of my battery. And plus, I've also found that it helps you mentally just use your phone less when you see your battery percentage not fully charged up. And I don't know why, it's just psychology, but it helps me in multiple areas of my life to have this set to 80% limit. So if you've not tried it out, I would recommend doing it, not just for your battery's sake, because it is the best thing you can do for your lithium ion battery is not go over 80% and also not go below 20% preferably, but also for your own mental health and productivity, it's good to not always have a fully charged battery. Keeps you off your phone more. But as for the battery life itself, not the battery health, battery life has actually been great. I mean, I really have zero complaints with the actual battery life of the 15 Pro Max. Now, it's not quite the iPhone 15 Plus level. It's not on the iPhone 15 Plus level. And that's one of my big regrets this year is picking the iPhone 15 Pro Max over the iPhone 15 Plus as my main device. Now, I say it's a regret, but it's really only for the battery and, the battery health I feel like would be better on that phone as well. But in reality, I could never switch to the 15 Plus because it still has a 60 hertz display. So kind of a regret, kind of not really, but that is one thing I wanted to mention as well, is that if you really only care about battery life, you probably already have the 15 Pro Max now, but just for the future, just know that the Plus models have a big advantage over the Pro, Pro Max, any other iPhone in terms of battery life. But now that I have my iPhone 15 Pro Max set to only charge up to 80%, I do have to charge around 1 time a day, sometimes even 2 times a day. It really just depends on how much I'm using my phone that day, but I typically get to around 5 to 6 p.m. until I have to charge up my phone for the first time, or maybe the only time during the day. So no complaints with battery life on the 15 Pro Max after almost 9 months of usage. Now, on the topic of the battery life and the battery health, I want to talk about the heat because this was another one of the big issues when the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max first came out. Apple actually acknowledged this and they pushed out a software update to fix the overheating issues with the 15 Pro and Pro Max. And ever since then, everything has been fine. So I've not really had any issues with heat. I will say that the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max were the worst heat I've ever experienced on an iPhone. That's probably also why the battery health was so bad on that phone. But for the 15 Pro and Pro Max, I've had no issues with it whatsoever. And I will say that it's been really nice not using a case because I've noticed that when you use a case, especially the tight cases, it definitely makes your phone more hot. So aside from the heat issue being fixed from software, we've also had a few other issues that have been addressed from software updates on the 15 Pro Max. And the first one was the big screen burn-in issue for the 15 Pro and Pro Max that turned out to be a bug that was fixed in iOS 17.1. It was really a non-issue after that. We also had action button prevention that was added in 17.1. This was to prevent accidental triggers, and we also got the option for translate in the action button, which turned out to be one of the best animations of the action button. And then with iOS 17.2, we got the addition of spatial video recording, which is going to allow you to record video so that you can view it on the Apple Vision Pro and kind of relive the moment. And also the focusing speed for the telephoto lens was fixed in 17.2. So one of the other big design changes with the iPhone 15 Pro series is the action button on the left-hand side. And that's something that I honestly still do not use at all. Like, I've used it a few times when the phone first came out because it was new and it was interesting and you could trigger shortcuts from pressing it. It was cool. You had the action button menu. All of that was cool. But honestly, today, I never use it. I mean, I maybe use it once a month, if that. And I think the reason why is because the good actions that you can set the action button to that are not shortcuts, we're not going to talk about shortcuts, the good actions that you can set this to don't really apply to me. Like, for example, the flashlight, that's already easily accessible on the lock screen, so I don't need that. Mute, my phone is already muted. I have it permanently muted. For focus modes, I have my focus modes on a schedule. So all my focus modes are based on a schedule or an automation, so I would never need to manually, enable a focus mode. So those are the three that would really apply to me, and I have other, ways of doing them that are just easier than pressing a button. So for me, I really only see the action button being useful for shortcuts, if you want to run shortcuts from the action button, or if you want to trigger an accessibility setting. Everything else for me just doesn't make any sense. Now, as far as the display goes, we have a 6.7-inch OLED display, which gets super bright. Even here in Florida under the bright sun, I use this thing outside all the time on auto brightness. I've been using auto brightness since the start, and it really shines when you're outside under direct sunlight. It also does not dim as much as previous iPhones because of the heat dissipation, which is great. Also, we have that 120 hertz ProMotion display, and I've said it before, and I will say it again. Once you go 120 hertz, you cannot go back. Okay, so let's get to my favorite feature of the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and that is the cameras. So we have a very familiar triple camera setup, but we can now shoot stills at 24 megapixels for the first time, and they look great with Smart HDR5, which is Apple's post-image processing. And being able to choose focal lengths by tapping on the 1x button is a new feature as well. That's nice to have, but honestly, I haven't really used it too much since I first set it up, although you can change the default in settings. But my favorite part about this camera setup is the 5x zoom on the new telephoto lens. So this is great for just zooming in general, but it is amazing for portrait shots. I find myself shooting portrait shots way more often than on previous iPhones because of the new 5x option. And what's really not talked about enough is the 5x zoom in video specifically, because for whatever reason, in videos, when you zoom in, it's a lot more grainy than on photos. So I've noticed that when you can use a 5x optical zoom instead of a digital zoom, the quality is so much better. It's really amazing with videos. And then of course we have ProRAW photos, which allows you to shoot in 48 megapixels. And this is a must for any important photo. I actually shoot a lot of my thumbnails to this day with the 15 Pro Max in ProRAW, and I edit those photos with my Lightroom presets in Lightroom. Actually, this video you're watching right now, the thumbnail for this video, is going to be shot with a 15 Pro Max using ProRAW. But things get even better when we talk about the video from the iPhone 15 Pro Max, because video is just incredible. I mean, shooting in 4K 30 or 4K 60 is great, but this camera really shines when you shoot in ProRes, because you can now shoot up to 4K 30. And a lot of my B-roll and videos, like this video included, comes from the iPhone 15 Pro Max shooting in 4K ProRes, quality. So it takes up a ton of storage, but since we have USB-C now on the iPhone 15, you can either shoot directly to an external storage device, or you can just plug in an SSD after shooting to quickly transfer the files, and then you can delete them from your phone so they don't take up a bunch of storage. And you can also shoot in log, which is amazing to even have that option on a phone to begin with. I don't use that, but it's an awesome feature to have if you are a filmmaker who uses an iPhone primarily. And then we do also have spatial video, which allows you to shoot videos in 1080p that can be watched on the Apple Vision Pro. And I have shot quite a few videos in this mode, some things that are important like family events and things like that. But it's kind of annoying how you have to shoot these videos, because you will see the little goggles logo down in the bottom left-hand corner. You tap on it, you have to put your phone in landscape mode, and then you record in 1080p. And it's kind of annoying because I don't like having to shoot the same subject or the same scene multiple times just to have one of them be, something I can watch in the Vision Pro. I wish it was built in. Maybe with the iPhone 16 Pro Max, it'll be built in, but I just wish that it was just built into regular video taking, like it was automatically turned into spatial video on the Apple Vision Pro. Now, USB-C is one of those things where I think everybody at first realized it was a big change for the iPhone, and a lot of people liked that we only had to have one cable to carry around. Like, that was a great benefit, but I will say after all these months, I've really started to appreciate the USB-C ports a lot more than I did in the first, maybe even 6 months. Like, really over these past few months, I've really had great appreciation for the USB-C ports because of transferring files. So this is something I've been doing a lot more recently. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit late to realizing this, but transferring files is so much easier. Like I said, you can shoot ProRes directly to an external drive if you want to because of the USB-C ports, but being able to transfer a bunch of different photos and videos, or even files like ROMs, if you have the Delta application, if you want to transfer a bunch of ROMs and you don't want to do it over AirDrop because your Wi-Fi is slow, you can just have a USB-C to USB-C connection, even to your iPad, and you can transfer those files like that. It's like 5 to 10 times faster than AirDrop, and it has just been a lifesaver. Now, on the flip side, one thing that I thought was going to be a lot more apparent, but hasn't really turned out to be over time, is the performance. So the iPhone 15 Pro Max is the first iPhone to have a Pro level chip, so it has the A17 Pro chip, and this chip does allow for hardware accelerated ray tracing in an iPhone for the first time ever, but that's great for gamers. I'm not a gamer, so for day-to-day performance, it's about the same as the 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max to me. Like, you're gonna notice an improvement with gaming, but I only play Wordle and puzzle games, so I'm not gonna get any type of benefit from ray tracing with Wordle and crossword puzzles. We also have 8 gigabytes of RAM, which is great for multitasking, but I would say it's pretty much the same as the previous iPhones, or at least the iPhone 14 Pro in terms of multitasking. You can't really do anything new, anything revolutionary with iOS that you couldn't do in the previous iOS version. So you're not really going to see a big benefit from the added RAM either, at least not in my experience. So yeah, performance overall, not really any big difference, and definitely not something worth upgrading for unless you want to have, all the AI features in the future, because I do think that Apple is going to limit a lot of those AI features to the Pro level chips on the iPhone. So now, with all that being said, do I regret purchasing the iPhone 15 Pro Max? And more importantly, do I regret using this as my main device after all of these months? And I would say for the most part, no. I think that for $1,200, this is a great purchase if you want the best photo and video quality in the game. I think it's the best out of any smartphone out there. I know that might be a hot take, compared to the Samsung phones, but I think that the iPhone 15 Pro Max takes the best photos and the best videos in the game if you're using ProRAW and ProRes. And if you are buying a Pro Max phone, you should probably be taking advantage of those features. Now, if you don't shoot in ProRes or ProRAW, I think the 15 Pro Max is most likely overkill for you, and you probably do not even need a Pro Max. You'd probably be better off with the regular iPhone 15, which I think is the best value out of any of the iPhone 15s, really any of the phones out there on the market right now, any of the iPhones out there right now. I think the 15 is the best value, even over the 15 Pro Max. But for me, and for what I use my phone for, I want longer battery life. So the 15 Pro Max has better battery life than the 15. I want better camera and video quality. This has better camera and video quality. Just different things like that I like having, and plus the titanium finish, I do like having that over what we have on the regular iPhone 15. So it really just comes down to what are you looking for in an iPhone. But for me, overall, I'm satisfied. I do wish that I had the 15 Plus level battery life. I wish my battery lasted as long as the iPhone 15 Plus, but I'd rather have the 120 hertz and sacrifice a little bit of that battery life for that 120 hertz ProMotion display. Now, if you're wondering if you should buy an iPhone 15 Pro Max now, or if you should wait for the iPhone 16 Pro Max, I would say that you should just buy this now. If you've already determined that you want to buy the iPhone 15 Pro Max, and if this video helped you, come to that conclusion as well, I think you should buy this now and not wait just based on speculation or based on what could be coming in the iPhone 16. You're never going to win in that game, because even if you buy the iPhone 16 series, you're going to be like, oh, well, I wonder what the iPhone 17 is going to have. And then, oh, I wonder what the iPhone 18 and iPhone 20 are going to have. You're never going to win. So I would say if you're looking at buying an iPhone 15 Pro Max now, you should just go ahead and get it. And don't worry about what's coming in the iPhone 16 Pro Max. It's probably not going to be all too big of a difference. So I hope this video helped you out, and I'll see you in the next one.